Okay, so my presentation today, how to create your own great PR, and I've tried to make it as topical as I can because, I don't know if you're like me, but one of the times a year that I love is the PR that comes out at Christmas time. It's great PR and there's a lot of competition between all the large brands. So they plough a lot of money into these campaigns, so what you see is kind of they're good examples of what works and why. So although they are big brands, the skills that they use to make these projects, you as SMEs can use them yourself, so we'll talk about that more later. I also want to try and make this as fun as I can for you, so there will be a prize given out to somebody who guesses the correct answer to something. Simon, I know, has already seen this before, so no prizes for Simon, and I'll be watching to make sure you... Yeah, no passing bits of paper. And the other thing is, hopefully all of this will be useful to you, but when there's a particular point that might be worth you making a note of, I've put a little red flag on the slide, so points that will really help you. Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Danni Smith. I've got my own PR and publicity company called Get Yourself Talked About. Prior to PR, I had just over 20 years experience in the media. And kind of all the skills that I've learned across that is what I kind of use for PR now, they're all very relevant. Journalism was how I started out. I started out actually with a local newspaper, and people always say, did you work on the nationals? But actually, when you work locally, I was on an evening newspaper in Essex. When you work locally, it's a bit like running your own business. You're across a lot of things, you have a lot of experience, and it kind of makes you really resourceful. You have to think on your feet, you have to come up with ideas for yourself, all of which is relevant when you're thinking about your own PR. I also worked in TV as a director and producer. I'm no longer a director, but I do go out with cameramen and direct shots. But we did a lot of packages, which is where you have like self-contained features. So you come up with a subject, you have nothing there, and then you have to go out and you have to create what you're going to film. So you think about the shots and who you want to interview. So again, all of that's very relevant for your PR. And I also studied screenwriting in LA. And you might kind of go, okay, where's screenwriting come into it? But actually, when you look at some of the advertising campaigns that we'll be looking at the end, with screenwriting, you're taught about how to kind of make people like your characters. You know, if you watch a film, you have to care about the people in the film, because if you don't, you'll just turn off. And in the same way, you kind of have to get that emotional connection with your customers, and we'll be talking a lot about the emotional connection later. Okay, so things I do now, I can film, I write a lot of content, scripts for people, and I also run a couple of masterclasses on how to create your own great PR, and also how to write well for work. So I've given a couple of slides if anybody's interested in those, so you can have a look at those later. Okay, so how do you create your own great PR, and what are the key ingredients for a successful PR or advertising campaign? Now, before we talk about any of those, this is what you need to understand: what PR is and how it works, how the media thinks, because kind of I'm always quite defensive about journalism. I mean, if you talk about the tabloids, they may have things they do that you might not agree with, but generally, journalists look for the truth in something, and when you're on the other side of it and you want to find out about a product and why it's good and why it works, you actually like what they do, and it's in your interest. So for you as well, you know, the media's a good thing. And the other thing that's really important, we'll be talking about a lot during this presentation, is the importance of getting people to engage emotionally with you and your brand. That's really important. Okay, so PR. PR is the way organisations, companies and individuals communicate with the public and the media. A PR specialist communicates with a target audience directly or indirectly through media with an aim to create and maintain a positive image and create a strong relationship with the audience. But sometimes it's not just about kind of content. Sometimes it's just about getting yourself being seen, because there's actually kind of benefits for being seen as much as you can. We'll talk about that in a minute. We're talking about brand recall. And there's a bit of a blur between kind of PR, marketing and advertising. All of it kind of rolls into one. Now, this is what I think PR isn't. And again, I think maybe because I was a journalist, when people talk about spin, I hate the word, and I kind of hate spin. I don't think it works, because they're talking about using tactics that are disingenuous, deceptive and manipulative. Well, if you want people to connect to you, you have to be very honest about who you are and what you do and why you do it. And I don't think spin works, because we British are quite cynical, so we kind of see through things. And when you think about spin, although it's in the sort of definition of PR, what kind of profession do you think about when you think about spin? Politicians. And does anybody here trust a politician? I'm not being filmed. People don't really believe them and trust them, so I don't think PR personally comes under spin, but it's there. So good PR for me, it should be all of the following. It should be clever and creative. This is a massive one. You don't have the huge budgets of the large brands, but you can still be creative. The way you film something, the ideas you come up with, you can make yourself stand out from the rest of the crowd. You also need to be subtle, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. But obviously, because I've been a journalist, I've written things in a news sense, and I've also done advertising too. And I kind of like it when you're not aware that you're being sold something. You're finding out about it, but it's not obvious selling. I really like subtle. This one again, and I will keep talking about this throughout, emotionally engaging and also honest. Okay, PR and how does it work? For me, it works on two levels. There's a conscious level and the subconscious level. If you pick up a piece, say like in a newspaper, or if you're reading something online, you're conscious that you're reading it. But PR is all around us. We're being bombarded by images. So it's very strong, it's there. So you need to just get out and be seen as much as you can. And it's almost like crossing a road. When you cross a road, you're only conscious that you're looking for the cars, but actually in the 6 seconds it might take, you might notice somebody next to you, there's a couple having an argument, you think, oh, it's because she's bought too much. You look across, there's a sale that's on somewhere, and then a cyclist goes past and you notice what they're wearing. All of that information your brain is processing all the time. But actually what you consciously process is the fact you're crossing the road, but PR is there, and you're being bombarded by images all the time. The second level, I would say, with PR, people always talk about short term. If you run a PR or advertising campaign, you obviously can measure the effect of it at the time. You look at the analytics, you can see how many visits your website has had. You use social media, how many impressions, how many new followers. But actually PR equally has a really important role in the long-term effect. And long-term, we're talking about they may see your name and they may not follow up straight away, but if you're out there and you've put yourself out there, they can hold on to your details and they can use in the future. So PR is very much about long-term benefits as well as the short-term. This is like a simple example, and I'm trying to use local examples here. This is one of the magazines that I write for every now and again. It's a local magazine, local advertising magazine. It is online, which is fantastic, so it uses SEO, but not everything is about the internet and social media. A lot of the traditional methods, like this advertising magazine, do still work because it gets delivered, hand-delivered to 12,000 homes in Huntingdonshire. So you know it goes to people's doors, and you open it up. There's lots of handy features about things you can do, places to go, and even if you don't choose to go and visit those places straight away, you can pull the ad out, keep it, and use it for later. So that's a long-term impact of something. And when we think about long-term and people trying to remember us, what that does is affect something called brand recall. Now, if you can get a good kind of total brand recall where people know who you are, then you can be a little bit more creative with your PR in the future, and I'll explain more on that in a minute. But is anybody familiar with the term brand recall? You can kind of... Martin?
I mean, there are adverts on television that are really fun, but you can never remember what the brand is. And there are others where you immediately know that that's the brand.
Yeah, kind of is what it says on the box.
A bit like the chimps and tea a few years ago, nobody knew it was that particular tea.
Okay, so brand recall, according to Wikipedia, refers to the ability of the consumer to correctly generate and retrieve the brand in their memory. So I can say to you, M&S, and you know straight away they sell home stuff. They've also got a gorgeous food department. You can say Homebase, and you know it's kind of DIY. Now how this works, I've actually lived abroad in America for 2 years. And when I first arrived, I remember just spending days just walking around each supermarket, trying to just get where everything was placed. You know, was it a high-end supermarket like Waitrose, or was it a lower-end one? And brand recall is really important. You just need to be remembered. Total brand recall is all the big names like John Lewis, and that's when people automatically know who they are, and that's why they can now go into their Christmas ads and they don't even need to show their products. You know, people know who they are, and because of that, they can be a bit more creative about the ads and what they do. Okay, so this is the prize time, everybody. As I said, Simon knows what's about to come. The next exercise is hopefully going to demonstrate the long-term impact of a successful PR campaign. Because I'm going to mention an ad that was shown on television some time ago, and then the first person who shouts out the name, once you know what it is, give a shout out. Okay, so the description. This ad featured a James Bond-like character who swam... Oh, I don't know who said that first. Was it you? I think it might have been you.
Oh, and the lady that milk tray.
Oh, now I don't know who to give the prize to. It is Milk Tray. And that wasn't going to be for the winner, but I wanted the slogan, so I think I might have to.
Really love milk tray.
I think I might need to give my chocolates to Graham. Yeah. Is that okay, everybody?
The slogan's all because the lady does milk tray.
And all because. Did we agree that Graham deserves the chocolates? Only if you share. You can share, you can open and share. Okay.
So there was an advert on the other day advertising for a new milk tray.
Yeah. Ah, that'd be exciting. Okay, so does anybody know when the last milk tray ad ran on TV? I don't know. Have a guess.
10 years ago?
Wasn't 80s, no.
95.
Go on higher. 10 years?
Last week.
Roughly.
It was last week.
Was there? Was there one last week?
Yes,
That's the new one.
Oh, okay. Oops, I've been caught out. Okay, before that then, the last one was, the last one before that was 2013. So before this current one then, it was 12 years ago and you still remembered it. So that's total recall. And that's because it was such a successful PR, they got all the ingredients right, that people still remembered it years later. And that's how you can remove.
It had one other very interesting effect. All sorts of spokes produced, which further boosted the brand.
Yes, yeah, and I'm sure they will with this one. Okay, so with SMEs, you might say, okay, well, I don't have the huge budget that the large brands have, so how am I going to do this? There are simple ways. I mean, apart from the obvious ones, to be on social media, to write your own blog, like Chris has talked about, to post on LinkedIn, to put yourself across as an expert. There's things like merchandise, branded merchandise. There's also vehicle advertising. It may not affect all of your businesses, but it's potentially, if you're looking to attract local businesses, it's great because it's inexpensive, and apart from the initial layout, once it's done, it kind of generates, self-generating. It also has lots of impressions or lots of sightings. So if people see you about, they start to see your name. They may not know what you do, but they remember your name. And also the other benefit of advertising on a vehicle is that you will attract the local customer. Okay, now can anyone think...
Do you want one?
I'll keep one for later, thank you.
Take two.
Oh no, one's fine, thank you. Can anyone think of a business that this type of advertising works well for? You may not say what I have, but...
Builders.
Oh, yeah, brilliant. Okay, tradesman. This guy here is somebody in Manchester, Eco Heating Services. I needed somebody about a month ago to fix our shower. Didn't know who he was, but I knew the van. And the strange thing about impressions is it is kind of PR in itself, because it creates a kind of a sense of familiarity. You feel like you know that person, even though you don't. You know their name. And people are more likely to use you if they feel like they know you, even if they don't. It's a lot like being on the internet, where you talk to people on the internet, social media, and you feel like they're your friend, but they're not your friend. You could walk past them in the street and not know who they were, but it's that kind of sense of knowing somebody. Okay, and this is where the PR element comes in. You might think, okay, there's no content that goes into that, so why would that be good for somebody's business? But what does a lot of impressions or sightings say about somebody?
They're busy.
They're busy, and that in itself is a recommendation. Okay, this one here, you may know, does everybody know Nikki Stott from Best Of, Hunting and St Ives? This is her vehicle that she goes around in. The local businesses pay to advertise on these little bubbles or spots. Then here, she's got branded merchandise down by Holt Island in St Ives. Fantastic place. I'd only been to Holt Island recently, and you can kind of get a key and unlock the gate and go into this amazing little island in St Ives. And that banner is there all the time on the weights, so that's a way that people would see her name and go, okay, Best Of. She's promoting local businesses. I see her around a lot. She's obviously doing her job well. Okay, now this is really important when you have your own business. Your business is a lot like having a baby. You've made it, you've put all your time and effort into it. You think it's wonderful because you do doesn't mean that somebody else does. Now this baby actually happens to be one of mine when she was younger. She's 5 now, so I do know that she is wonderful, but you wouldn't know why because you don't know her. So the biggest thing is kind of trying to detach yourself from your business and look at it from an outsider's point of view and really analyse it. So for me, it's not enough to say that you've got a product you want to sell. Selling is advertising. So the red flag moment, you need to forget about selling and think about story instead. Story is really important. When you talk about a story, if you approach something you're doing as a news story, it takes away the advertising elements of what you're doing. Now, when I've worked as a journalist, we've done news stories, and I also used to write lots of advertising features, and there's a very different style. Now when I approach advertising, I don't want it to feel obvious, because it's a bit like If I read something and within the first 3 or 4 seconds I know that someone's being paid to write the article, it doesn't feel as authentic to me. I kind of think, okay, well, you would write good stuff about this because you're being paid to. So the trick is, if you're going to advertise something, try and think of the story element, the news angle, and make it feel less advertising, more story. So you're still selling, but it's subtle, and it's going back to that word subtle. Okay, so how do you let people know how wonderful you are without actually coming right out and saying it? Okay, get someone else to say it for you, that's easy. This could be through testimonials, quotes from customers, or you could even approach an expert in the field. If you're writing a feature, why don't you treat yourself, you approach them and say, well, maybe you could help me with some comments for this, and you get some publicity out of the piece as well. So they could give some feedback on your product or services. Maybe you're producing something that's kind of new in the market, new and exciting. Maybe you're doing something that could be in a feature about top 10 gifts that you should be buying your children this Christmas. So have a think along those lines. Don't be afraid to approach other people. Also talk about your experience, because if people know you have a lot of experience, it's kind of that builds that trust. It's that automatic perception of what you can do. If you've won any awards, make sure that goes in any of your material as well. And think like a customer. I also think like a customer where you think, okay, if I was having to part with my money, what would I be looking for? What's the thing that might stop me from parting with my money? And try and address any questions from that side within any PR material you produce. Again, this is a red flag moment, very important. My biggest piece of advice for you today to take home would be stop thinking about selling and to think about story. So in other words, start thinking like a journalist. You have to train your brain to think like a journalist. Okay, and when I was talking about being a journalist when I was younger, when I was local, there's certain times of the year that there's a real dearth of news, particularly around Christmas. The weeks running up to it, and so the week after, it would be really quiet. And we used to joke that even the criminals were on holiday because there would literally be nothing to report about. So we would have to be really resourceful and come up with ideas ourselves. And that's almost what you need to be training your own, yourself to do, and all your staff. Encourage them to come up with ideas that could be potential PR opportunities for you. And for me, I kind of always joke, now I've been a journalist, that you don't see them, but there's 2 invisible satellite dishes behind my ears, and every single conversation I have with somebody, I'm thinking, could that be the angle of the story? Could it be a news story? How could they use that? So I'm always kind of listening and focusing on what people say. Okay, so how do you train yourself to think like a journalist? Okay, so you need to change your mindset from selling to story. You need to consciously start thinking like a journalist and encourage your staff to as well. Remember that if something as simple as a single conversation, it could be like 2 minutes, that could lead to an idea, that could be a PR opportunity, new products, or even better customer care. Okay, let your staff know that you're open to ideas and suggestions. Install a suggestion box at work where staff can post ideas and thoughts and comments. You never know where they're going to take you, but there's potential there. And make it something you do all the time. I remember when I started training as a journalist, my editor saying journalist is never off duty. Even when we weren't on shift and doing works, we still had to report stuff if we saw it. We had to ring in and let them know what was happening. And you need to be thinking all the time, every conversation, everything you see, look at what your competitors are doing. There could be something there that you could do and maybe do better. Okay, you need to think or ask yourself the following. Is there a story in what you're doing, and what's the angle? Is this something that someone outside of your business would be interested in? And that goes back to what I was saying about your business being like your baby. If you come up with an idea, of course you'll think it's good because it's for you and your business. But float the idea around friends and family. If somebody outside of your business thinks it's interesting, chances are there's a story there. Go further, and if somebody outside your industry thinks it's interesting, then that could be something out maybe beyond trade press. It could be something that go in the local media or national. Okay, this is also really important. Have a look at what's going on in the news every day. Quite often when I tweet, there'll be something I've seen on BBC Breakfast and I think, oh, that's kind of topical and I like the idea. If there's something topical that's going on, you can kind of piggyback on all the PR around it and everything that's going on. You can piggyback on it and you'll get more publicity out of it yourself. And it could be something like a report that relates to your business, some instant statistics, or even a topic that's trending on social media. Okay, this is another thing. Sometimes when you go to write something or film something, you only think of it on one platform. but have a real think about what you're doing. Could it be used in many different ways? Could the blog you're writing also be turned into a short video? Could it be a post? Could it be a tweet? And does the story have a local, national or international potential? Chances are international is unlikely, but don't rule it out. Have a look at all the different levels of publicity you could get. Okay, so we're back to the baby again. Detach yourself from your baby. With your business, you need to look at it from an outsider's point of view. As a journalist, you always look at the story from two sides. And in screenwriting, when you invent a character, you have to have someone who's their opponent. So you look at the fors of an argument and the against. Now that's really important, because although some of you may think, what's the journalist going to say? How are they going to interview me? Actually, you need to look at the holes, the gaps that might be missing in any publicity. And if you think there's something there, make sure you address it in anything you put out there. Okay, now this, normally what I would do is give more examples of stuff, but this is just some of my recent PR I did. I'm sure everybody knows Ed Goodman from the Cambridge Business Lounge. I first met him when he launched the Business Lounge in St Ives, and he was talking about why work hubs are really good for people who are self-employed, because for us there's a big social aspect when you work. When you're self-employed, you don't see other people every day. And for me, I like that, because I'm very sociable too, and it's probably the hardest thing of my job that I find. I miss seeing people every single day. Obviously, you're out and about, but having that team that you work with. So it's nice to kind of form a connection with other self-employed people. So what I wanted to do with that, I didn't want it to be an obvious advertising piece. I wanted to make it personal, which is where I talked about why I like the idea of work hubs. I also wanted to make it topical, like a news story, so that people picked it up and didn't think straight away, okay, this is an advertising piece. And was there a news angle? There was actually, because there are currently 4.6 million self-employed people in the UK, but it's actually the highest number since records began 40 years ago. So despite all the austerity measures that are going on, despite the recessions of the previous years, there's still people setting up businesses. So that was a great news angle to go in. Now, I only had about 500 words, and there was lots of stuff I wanted to include. But I had to really narrow down what I thought would be the good PR, why Ed's Cambridge Business Lounge was a particularly good place to be. Now for me, when I looked around, there were little things that as a journalist, when you talk about writing a colour piece, you don't just interview somebody, but you kind of get a feel for what they're like and what they do. And all around the Business Lounge, there were lots of inspirational sayings and lots of positive feedback. And I really got the sense from Ed that he was someone who actually enjoys working with small businesses and genuinely wants them to do well. So I wanted that to come across. Now, one of the first things I spotted when I walked up to the lounge was a board outside, and its saying was, working for yourself doesn't mean working by yourself. And I loved that, so I included that. I also wanted to include Ed's experience, because he has written a book about growing small businesses, and he's also, in a previous life, worked with Barclays, training the in-house staff with what kind of products they should be using with small businesses to make sure that it's relevant. So when you think about that, it's kind of promoting him as someone who knows what they're talking about. He has empathy with them too, because he's also worked from home. And he's also talked about how when he commuted into London, he hated the commute, but when he worked from home, he hated that too, because he felt he was missing out. So he's kind of got that empathy as well. So all of those were really important points that subtly helped kind of say this is a good place to go. So again, hopefully that was subtle. Now, there's obviously not enough time in this talk to talk about the different platforms you can use, but there's the obvious ones, or the posts you do, advertising platforms. But video obviously is becoming very important. These are some of the statistics from Cisco. By 2017, 69% of all consumer internet traffic, video will account for 69% of all consumer internet traffic. 64% of marketers expect video to dominate their strategies. And YouTube receives more than 1 billion unique visitors every month, more than any other channel apart from Facebook. Now these are some of the statistics I pulled from YouTube. That the number of hours people spend watching videos on YouTube has increased by 60% year on year, and it's the fastest growth they've seen in 2 years. And the number of people watching YouTube each day has increased by 40% year on year since March 2014. Now where YouTube comes into its own with all of you is the how-to videos. I'm always going on YouTube. Anything technical, any problems with my computer, I'm on how-to. And actually yesterday when we were having a run through, somebody came up from downstairs who works in IT, and within about 2 seconds he showed me this trick on how you can download videos from YouTube that you can put into your presentation. And it took him about 2 seconds to show this trick. There's no, you don't have to buy any app to do it. But if if you have something, a knowledge that you can share, if you can do a short how-to video on YouTube, that's a good way of kind of promoting yourself, as well as what Chris was saying, kind of promoting yourself as an expert through blogs, through LinkedIn. And the other thing that's worth mentioning here, for anyone who doesn't know, Ed Goodman was telling me that when he wrote his book, he was actually posting a lot on LinkedIn, and Pearson, the publishers, actually approached him to write the book because they'd seen his blogs. So think of yourself as an expert and think, okay, how can I use this through a post, through a video? Okay, so if you're doing a video, it's like anything. Sometimes I feel that people feel they have to be doing these things, but they kind of rush into it and they don't really formulate a plan or idea. Now with video, there's certain things I think you need to do. If you're going to do it well. First of all, make sure you know exactly what it is you're going to say. Give yourself some kind of script. Doesn't mean you need to read from it, but just make sure you bullet point everything you need to say, and that's to stop you from rambling. You kind of need to keep your videos short and sweet. Make sure that the environment that you film in is interesting and relevant. Now, I have seen some videos where people are they have very practical jobs, but then they film their video just talking to the computer screen for like 2-3 minutes. If you have a practical job, get out there, be seen in your business. If you're a chef, make sure you film it in your kitchen. If you're a nutritionist talking about the importance of seasonal eating, get out in the allotment and garden. And remember that we have 5 senses, so dig up the soil, film yourself digging up the soil, pull off the leaves and smell the freshness of the vegetables. Make sure you stimulate all the senses and things you do. Make sure that your film isn't static. Kind of a bit of a bugbear where you do see people just talking to a blank screen and they don't move. Now, what you could do here is if you go to BBC Breakfast in the morning and just really analyse what they do when they go out and they do a package and they film on a particular subject, have a look at how many kind of changes they have there. They'll have the presenter, then they'll cut to an interview, and then they'll do cutaways of things they're talking about. So a cutaway, does anybody, I know Simon will know, do people know what cutaway here is? Yeah, okay, so if they're talking about a book, they'll have shots of somebody flicking through the book. You can also interview other people. Don't be frightened to bring other people into your video and interview them. And there's also nothing to stop you from walking. If you're introducing something, I want to walk towards Richard now, but instead of just standing and having a film pointing at you, you can literally walk like this. And that partly helps you relax more because you're not just focused on presenting to a lens that's pointing in your face, you're also thinking about walking as well. It's a kind of a slight distraction, but it also gives your video some movement. And you also need to think about music. All of which leads to my final important points, which will be more red flag moments for you. So, the Christmas ads. These are some of the Christmas ads from last year, and one slightly earlier than that too. Does everybody know the ads? Do they recognise the images? This one here, does anybody recognise that one?
Which one?
Is it not coming up with that? Oh, it's not. It's not showing up. Okay, the top one with the soldiers. Does everybody know that one? Okay, so this was the Sainsbury's ad from last year, where they reenacted the moment in World War I where the two sides.
There's something in their pocket, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was a truce between them it's a true based on the true story where they stopped fighting on Christmas Day for a game of football. Yeah. And at the end, they cut open to the German soldier, I think his name was Otto, pulls out a bar of chocolate, and the message was it's come from the English soldier. It's all about sharing. This one here, Monty the Penguin, that was John Lewis last year. A little boy whose best friend was a penguin and he wanted to find him a mate to make him happy. This one was the M&S one, the two fairies. So they travelled around, flew around towns and cities, making people's dreams come true. And then this one here, this is one of my favourites that I'll actually be showing you in a minute. This was 2013 John Lewis Christmas ad, and it was the bear and the hare. Get that the right way around. So what I'd like to do, before I show this, I'll say why I've chosen John Lewis. Personally, I love everything about their ads. For me, they tick all the boxes about what makes a successful PR and marketing campaign. But actually, they have 4 of the most shared Christmas global ads of all time. So whatever they're doing it right. So before we watch the new one that's been released today, which is very exciting, this is the one from 2013, The Bear and the Hare. And what I'd like to do, enjoy it, but have a little think about how it's making you feel, things you notice, and I'd like to make a quick note of them at the end. No one's crying. Okay, so does anybody have any thoughts watching that? Does anything spring out, jump out at you?
It evokes quite a different lot of emotions, actually.
Emotional, that's the emotion connection, that's a good one, brilliant. Anybody notice something that's surprising? What does John Lewis do?
They don't mention themselves at all.
No. No.
It's got a Disney feel to it.
Yeah, definitely. The big eyes of the bunny and the hair, I should say. Okay, the big thing that's worth mentioning is that John Lewis, they're a retailer. None of their products are evident in that. So again, it's shown you it's all about the emotional connection. They're not trying to sell you their products, but actually they're in a sense, they've got a bit of advantage over you because they have what I was talking about earlier, the total brand recall. But if you can get your name out as much as you can, you have a bit more free rein to kind of do more stuff. So here we go. These are the key ingredients. First of all, you need to make it personal. If you can let people feel as though they know you, it could be one kind of descriptive word you use in your piece. If they feel like they know you, that will help create the emotional connection. Now with the ad, it was personal because it wasn't really anything to do with John Lewis. Yes, technically it was, and their name came up and they made the ad, but actually the story was about the bear and the hare and their unusual friendship. You need to make sure people connect emotionally with your brand. You need to be clever and creative. And again, going back to that total recall, because everybody knows who they are, you have a bit more of a free rein to be more creative. But as SMEs, you still have that potential to be creative in what you do. You need to be creative. Try and think of a different way, something amusing or something funny, or a different way of carrying a message. What I liked about the John Lewis ad was that right at the end, you didn't know what was going to be in that package. And it was clever because it's an alarm that woke up a bear that was hibernating. So for the first time in his life, he'd seen Christmas. It was very clever. And you also need to tell a story. Now this, I think, relates probably to the times, before we had pens, computers. We had to remember stories when we were sat around the campfire. And so I think our brains are hardwired to remember a story. There's statistics to say that you don't remember statistics, you remember stories, so that's important. Okay, now I'm going to be quick, Luana, a couple more minutes, is that okay? What I did want to say, or read out to you, was the comment from Rachel Swift, who's the head of brand marketing at John Lewis. And there's a quote in the Telegraph article today, which says, she says, there's now a house style to the adverts which she doesn't want to change. What she says is, it has become part of our handwriting as a brand. It's about storytelling through music and emotion. The sentiment behind that hasn't changed, and that's quite intentional. The strategy behind our campaigns is always about thoughtful gifting. So again, it's going back to what we're talking about, emotion.
Yeah, because the words in the song exactly was the right timing as.
Yeah, and there were clever tricks with the hare's ears. I don't know if you noticed, every time it was sad, the ears flopped down. It's kind of clever. Okay, so thank you for coming today to the talk. What I would like to do, is there time to show John Lewis's campaign for today, or would you like to cut? Okay, I'll show you the one today and you can compare, but we won't discuss it, but you can have a look at it. And it's exciting because it was released at 8 a.m. this morning, so this is kind of their one for this year. Just to let you know, I do also run some masterclasses on PR and writing. I've included them within the packs with Luana and Chris's information too. So what I'd like to do today, thank you for coming. I'd like you to leave you with a warm, cosy feeling. And if I had some mulled wine to serve, I would. So I will leave you with the ad, John Lewis's Christmas ad, 2015.
Just give us a voucher from John Lewis.
I know, they're getting a lot of promotion stuff.
I would like to leave this city. This old town don't smell too pretty. I can feel the warning signs running around my mind. There hides the world away. I've been lost, I've been found, but I don't feel down. There hides the world away. I've been lost, I've been found, but I don't feel down. I don't feel down.
What I particularly loved was the shots of the eyes at the end and the teardrop. So it's all about emotional. Okay, thank you everybody. I'm now going to introduce Luana.